I think it's useful to other people. Okay, so the get and post, so the post in the background. So in this particular instance, and where was I? Here we're deciding on a post. Who are you? Okay, so now input, okay, so we started our form, right? We have an input type equals text. That's one of the form elements that we can use, a simple text. Here's the key for PHP. Name equals last name. So that will say, in the processing program, where am I going to be able to get to this data? The answer is in $_ post square bracket last name. Close your square bracket. All right. Why under $$ post? Because we decided to use a method of post. Right? If we used a method of get, we'd have to use $_ get. So depending on how you choose to submit your process. All right. Now the ID equals last is it's an HTML sort of a thing, right? Did Habermas, those of you who took WebScript or web publishing, hammer you with IDs, where you have to have IDs? They have to be unique on the form. All right. So now here's why I use it. I don't. The textbook doesn't use IDs at all. I introduce it here. An ID is useful for the usability because if you look at the label for equals last matches up with the ID. So it just means that if you click this last name on the form, it'll highlight the corresponding element.
I think you can only use an ID once.
You can only use an ID.
A class more than once.
Right, IDs are unique on the page, right? Which makes sense. If you click last name, you only want it to go to one place,
yeah.
Right? Okay, so that's why I separate these out. So an ID, the ID can have the same value as the name, but ID corresponds to the label, and the name corresponds to the PHP program in the background. Questions? All right, and so we have two inputs, first name and a last name, and then a submit button, input type equals submit. That's going to allow you to submit your form and then close your form. And so in the processing program, where are we? In the processing program, the actual code, which is, it's pretty flimsy, but you have your title, and here's your PHP. Your first is equal to $_ post first name, $ last equals post last name. All right, welcome first and last. And that's so really that's an introduction. Now there are again, I'm kind of bouncing around here. We've looked at text. There's lots of different input types. HTML5 presents us with even more. I'm going to ignore HTML5 for just the time being and just talk about basic HTML elements. There's password types, radio boxes, or radio groups, checkboxes, hidden values, submit, reset, and there are others also. There's what's the one I'm forgetting here that's common? Select boxes with option groups. So we're going to look, and HTML5 offers even more input types. Can somebody give me an example of an HTML5 input form or input element that's not listed here? David? Oh. Yeah, anything? Required is a feature. It's an attribute, but it's not an actual type. There's like a checkbox. I know. Radio is part of regular HTML. That's here. I'm drawing a blank too. But okay, we'll get to it. I'm going to look it up. I have a whole HTML5 document. But what I want you to do is master the basic HTML elements first, and then we can start peppering it in with HTML5. Okay, so tell you what. Let's just take a quick look at some other form elements, and we'll call it quits. And we're going to really hit this hard next time, all right? So here's a question. How many pets do you have? Input type equals radio, right? So it's a radio button. The name is pets. Now notice that this is a radio group. VB experts. Raise your hand if you're a VB expert. Raise your hand if you know any VB at all. Okay, with radio groups, you had to actually group it in a... Yeah. You had to put a group box around it or something like that. Yeah. Here, the way that you logically group a radio group is you give it the same name. So name equals pets, name equals pets, name equals pets. Okay, only one of them can be selected at a time, so whatever one you selected is going to come through as $_post pets, right? ID is optional. It's only used for the label. And then a value, that's the important thing, 0, 1, or 2, and that corresponds to the visual perspective. So notice, value is equal to 2 corresponds to the label 2 or more. So the label can be different than the value that gets passed. So if we click 2 or more here, boom, and submit, what's going to show up on the other end? Post, sub. Oh, okay. This is a good question. All right, so last question of the day. We click 2. We hit submit. We're using a method of post. What's going to, how am I going to fetch the data? Or which memory location is going to be held in with what?
2 or more, right?
Be very, very specific here. Can you read this code right here? Input type equals radio, name equals pets, ID equals pet2, value equals 2, label for pet2 is 2 or more. So it's this button right here. We click here, this gets selected, we hit submit. Tell me in the processing program what memory location is going to be populated with what? Or which variable is going to be populated with what? I'll give you a hint, $. Underscore. Go ahead, you were going to say it. Post.
Oh,
Square bracket, what?
no, it's just,
Pets
well, it would be single quote.
Pets.
Yeah.
is going to contain, will contain what value?
2.
Everybody agree? 2? 2. Not 2 or more. 2 or more is a descriptive element of that radio button. The value that gets passed is 2. Okay? Let me ask you this. Last question of the day, and I will keep pounding you with this. Is it the number 2 or the string 2? It's a 50-50 guess. The answer is it's always 100% of the time being passed as a string. So this will be the string 2, but remember, PHP does that auto conversion for you. So if you want to treat it like a number, all you got to do is treat it like a number, and it'll act like a number. But it gets passed as a string. So in a nutshell, that's what's happening there. All right. So study this particular example. Take a look at the checkbox one also. That'll be useful. And I'd say if you have the radio button, the checkbox, the text box, we can hammer out the rest next time. We'll also throw in some HTML5 just because you guys are yammering for it. And probably at this, I would say this is the very first semester where it's relevant because I'd say probably 90% of the browsers now are supporting most of HTML5 in slightly different ways, but at least they're getting there. So I think we can talk HTML5 here. Okay, well, I'm done. If you have any questions, let me know. If you need me to look at anything for your project, I'll be glad to.